The night was drenched in rain, the windshield blurred with streaks of water, and my trembling hands clutched the seat as if it were my last anchor. I remember the headlights slicing through the darkness, the screech of tires against asphalt, and the deafening silence that followed a single word, jump. My heart shattered in that moment, not from the crash, but from his choice. Because when the car spun out of control, and he had only one chance to save a life, it wasn't me. It was her, his first love. And that decision changed everything. You're watching The Untold Love, where hidden stories of love, heartbreak, and betrayal come alive. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay with us till the very end. They say the most beautiful stories often begin in the simplest of moments. For me, it was an ordinary afternoon that turned into the beginning of everything. I still remember the way the sunlight poured through the cafe window, catching in the strands of his hair. He wasn't supposed to matter. He was just another face in a crowded place. But somehow, his smile lingered. It had a warmth that felt like home, even before I knew what home with him would mean. Our first conversation was clumsy, full of little pauses and nervous laughter. Yet, beneath the surface, it carried a quiet magic. He asked me about my favorite book, and I remember blurting out something silly, only to see his eyes light up like he had been waiting for that exact answer. From that moment, it was as if the world had shifted, like destiny had nudged us closer. With him, everything felt effortless. Days turned into nights of endless talks, where secrets spilled like rain, and silence never felt heavy. He would walk me home, carrying nothing but stories and dreams. He promised me forever in little ways, like holding my hand tighter when the streets grew dark, or showing up on stormy nights just to make sure I wasn't alone. Those gestures seemed small at the time, but to me, they were everything. Love, when it first arrives, doesn't crash in like a storm. It drifts quietly, like a song you've always known but never heard before. That's how it was with us. He became my favorite part of every day. His laughter echoed in the corners of my heart, and his presence turned ordinary moments into something worth remembering. I thought to myself, this is what it feels like to be chosen, to be loved. I built dreams around him, weaving his name into every tomorrow I imagined. I saw us traveling, building a home, filling it with love and warmth. I saw myself growing old beside him, with his hand still holding mine. I believed in his words, his promises, his eyes that told me I was enough. And yet, even in those perfect days, there were moments, fleeting, almost invisible. The way he sometimes stared off, lost in thoughts he never shared. The way his smile faltered at the sound of a certain name. I noticed, but I silenced the questions. Because when you're in love, you don't want shadows to ruin your light. Back then, I told myself it was nothing. Back then, I chose to believe we were unbreakable. But life has a way of testing the things we hold closest. And my test was yet to come. They say love is brightest at the beginning, but I slowly learned that even the brightest light can cast the darkest shadows. For me, that shadow was her, his first love. I didn't meet her right away. At first, she existed only in fragments. In the way his voice softened when he spoke about the past, or in the way his eyes glazed over when an old song played on the radio. He never said her name often, but when he did, it lingered in the air longer than mine ever did. I told myself it was nothing. Just a memory. Just a ghost he no longer cared for. But ghosts don't fade easily, do they? Sometimes they live quietly in the corners of our lives, waiting for the right moment to remind us they still matter. I began to notice small things, little cracks in the walls of our love. A phone he kept turned face down. A message he quickly deleted before I could ask. Sleepless nights where he tossed and turned, whispering words I couldn't understand. And then, one night, I heard it clearly, her name. Spoken like a prayer in his sleep. My heart froze, but I convinced myself I must have imagined it. Because how could I compete with a memory I couldn't even touch? The first time I saw them together was by accident. I was leaving work early, rushing through the crowded street, when I caught sight of him standing across the road. His smile was different, gentler, softer. The kind of smile that spoke of familiarity, of history, of a love that perhaps had never truly ended. And the way he looked at her, it was as if the rest of the world had disappeared. As if I was never part of his story at all. I didn't confront him that night. I carried the weight of what I saw in silence, letting it sink deeper into my heart. Every word he spoke after that felt heavier, every touch less certain. I wanted to believe in us, to believe that I was enough to erase her shadow. But sometimes, the heart is stubborn. Sometimes it refuses to let go of the first person it ever belonged to. In those moments, I realized that love is not always about who stands beside you today. Sometimes, it's about who your soul still aches for in the quiet. And for him, I was beginning to fear, it wasn't me. It was raining that evening, one of those heavy rains that makes the world blur, where headlights scatter across wet asphalt like shattered glass. We were driving home, the silence inside the car louder than the storm outside. His hands gripped the steering wheel, his jaw clenched tight, and I could feel the distance between us, as if we weren't just sitting apart, but living in different worlds. I wanted to speak. I wanted to ask him about her, about the truth I was too afraid to face. But the words stayed trapped in my throat. Instead, I just stared out the window, watching raindrops race each other, pretending that everything was still okay. And then, in a heartbeat, the world broke apart. A pair of headlights came from nowhere, blinding us, cutting through the storm like a blade. The screech of tires, the violent spin of the car, the sound of metal twisting against metal, it all happened in a single, merciless second. My body slammed against the seatbelt, breath knocked out of me, heart hammering like it wanted to escape my chest. When the car finally came to a stop, tilted and smoking, I realized we weren't alone. She was there. His first love. I don't even remember how she appeared in that chaos, only that she was in the back seat, trembling, her face pale with fear. My mind screamed with confusion, but before I could make sense of anything, the choice was already made. He turned, not to me, not to the woman he called his present, his forever. His hands reached for her. His voice cracked as he called her name, pulling her out, shielding her from the broken glass, holding her as if she were the only one who mattered. I sat there, trapped, frozen, my lungs burning for air and my heart breaking in silence. My eyes begged him, pleaded for him to see me, to choose me, just once. But in that moment, I wasn't his priority. I wasn't his instinct. She was. The storm outside roared on, but it was nothing compared to the storm inside me. I thought love was proven in quiet moments, in whispered promises. But that night I learned the truth, love is proven in choices. And when the world demanded his answer, he didn't choose me. That night wasn't just the day of the crash. It was the day my illusion shattered, the day I realized I was never truly his. When I opened my eyes, the first thing I saw was white, blinding, endless white. The ceiling of the hospital, the pale sheets tucked around me, the sterile light that made everything feel unreal. My body ached with every breath, but the pain in my chest was heavier than the wounds stitched into my skin. He was there, sitting by the edge of my bed, but his eyes weren't on me. They were lost, distant, fixed somewhere I could not follow. When he finally looked at me, he forced a smile, fragile and fleeting, the kind of smile you give when you don't know what else to offer. "You're safe now," he whispered. But the words rang hollow. Safe? I didn't feel safe. Not from the memory of the crash. Not from the truth I had seen with my own eyes. I wanted to ask him why. Why her? Why did his arms reach for her when mine were empty? But the words caught in my throat, choked by the fear of hearing the answer I already knew. Instead, I lay there, pretending to rest, while my heart screamed silently inside me. The days blurred together. Nurses came and went, machines beeped, time moved forward, but I stayed frozen in that moment of betrayal. He brought me flowers, my favorite tea, small comforts wrapped in guilt. And every time, I looked at him, searching for the man who once promised me forever. But all I saw was distance, a quiet shame he refused to name. Whispers reached me before the truth did. Friends who visited spoke too gently, their eyes filled with pity. I overheard the nurses, the way they said her name, the way they mentioned how he refused to leave her side that night, how he held her as if letting go would break him too. Every word cut deeper, confirming what I already knew but didn't want to admit. At night, I would stare at my reflection in the small mirror by the bed. The bandages, the bruises, the hollow eyes staring back, they weren't just the marks of the accident. They were the marks of being unloved, of being chosen. Second, of realizing that the place I thought I held in his heart had never truly been mine. And so, as my body healed, something inside me broke even more. Because sometimes the deepest wounds aren't the ones that doctors can stitch. Sometimes they're the ones left by the people who swore they'd never hurt you. Healing is supposed to make you stronger. But as my wounds closed, the truth only grew louder, sharper, impossible to silence. I could no longer carry it inside me, the weight of his choice, the shadow of her presence. I needed answers, even if they broke me. One evening, when the house was quiet and the rain tapped against the windows, I finally asked the question I had been burying since the crash. My voice trembled, but it was steady enough to cut through the silence. Why her? He froze. The words seemed to knock the air from his lungs. For a moment, he tried to pretend he didn't understand. But I saw it in his eyes, the flicker of truth he could no longer hide. I didn't mean, he began, his voice cracking. But I stopped him. Don't tell me it was instinct. Don't tell me it was reflex. Because when your world was falling apart, your instinct wasn't me. It was her. Tears burned my eyes, but I held them back, refusing to let them fall. I wanted him to look at me, to see the woman who had stood by his side, who had believed every promise. Instead, he lowered his gaze, ashamed, and in that silence, I already knew the answer. Finally, he spoke softly, as if confessing a sin. I never stopped loving her. The words pierced me deeper than any wound from the crash. He admitted what I had feared all along. That while his body was with me, his heart had always belonged somewhere else. That I was not the love of his life, I was the comfort, the safe choice, the one he thought could patch the holes someone else left behind. My chest tightened, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. Every memory flashed before me, the laughter, the late-night talks, the promises whispered in the dark. All of it now felt like a lie. Not because he didn't care for me, but because he cared for her more. I gave you everything, I whispered, my voice breaking. And still, I was never enough. He reached for me, his hands trembling, but I stepped back. I couldn't let him touch me, not when the truth had burned away whatever was left of us. That night, I realized love isn't always stolen by betrayal or destroyed by anger. Sometimes, it simply dies in the shadow of someone else's name. And in that moment, I knew, I couldn't stay. Not when I was fighting for a place in a heart that had already made its choice. Leaving wasn't easy. It never is, when your heart still aches for someone even after it's been broken. I stood by the doorway that night, suitcase in hand, my body trembling, my mind whispering every reason to stay. But deep inside, I knew the truth. He had made his choice long before I made mine. He didn't beg me to stay. He didn't run after me. Maybe he knew he had no right. Or maybe he was too tired of pretending. Either way, the silence between us spoke louder than any words could. It was over. Not with anger, not with screaming, but with the quiet realization that love had slipped through our fingers, never truly ours to hold. The days that followed felt like walking through fog. Everywhere I went, memories followed me, and the sound of his laughter, the warmth of his touch, the way he once made me feel like I was the only person in the world. But slowly, I began to understand, I wasn't mourning him. I was mourning the version of love I thought we had. There's a difference. He chose her in the car that night, but more than that, he chose her in his heart long before I ever stepped into his life. I was just too blinded by hope to see it. And once I accepted that, the pain began to change. It didn't vanish, but it transformed into strength, into clarity, into a reminder that I deserved more than being someone's second choice. I started to find myself again. In the quiet mornings with coffee, in the books I had forgotten to read, in the laughter of friends who reminded me of my worth. Healing wasn't a sudden sunrise, it was slow, like dawn creeping over the horizon. But it came. And with it came peace. Sometimes, love stories don't end with forever. Sometimes, they end with a lesson. His role in my life was never meant to be eternal, it was meant to show me the strength I didn't know I carried, the courage I needed to walk away, and the truth that my heart deserved someone who would choose me every time, without hesitation. And so, when I look back at the crash, I no longer see just the broken glass, the twisted metal, or the betrayal. I see the turning point of my life. The moment I was set free. Because love is not about who you lose, it's about who you become after the loss. And I became me again. And so, that was the day everything ended, not with fire or explosions, but with a choice. A single moment that told me more about love than a lifetime of promises ever could. He chose her. And in that choice, I found my answer. For a long time, I thought love was about holding on, about fighting harder, forgiving deeper, waiting longer. But sometimes, love is about letting go. Letting go of the illusion, of the dream you built in your mind, of the person you thought was yours. And in that letting go, I discovered something far greater, myself. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. The pain was sharp, endless, like carrying shattered glass inside my chest. But pain has a strange way of teaching us. It strips us down to the truth. It shows us who we are when everything else is taken away. And what I found, buried beneath the heartbreak, was strength I never thought I had. I learned that I didn't need to be someone's second choice to feel worthy. I didn't need to beg for a place in someone's heart. I was enough, even when he didn't see it. And maybe that's what real healing looks like, not erasing the memories, not pretending the love never existed, but standing tall in the aftermath and saying, I survived this. And I'm still whole. So, if you're listening right now, and you've ever been left behind, forgotten, or made to feel like you weren't enough, remember this. Their choice does not define your worth. Your story doesn't end with their betrayal. Sometimes, the most powerful love story is the one you write with yourself. This was the Untold Love. Thank you for staying with me through this journey of heartbreak, choices, and strength. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your words mean more than you know. And stay close, because in our next story, a hidden letter will shatter a marriage built on lies, revealing a betrayal so deep it will leave you breathless. You won't want to miss it. Until then, remember, love doesn't always end the way we dream. But sometimes, the ending is just the beginning of who we were meant to become.